This is upsetting.
Oh my god. No! Alright boys, I had to do a review on this game because it is sick. This is gonna come from someone who played a lot of mordhau, and I was, a little above the average player in mordhau, but, I'm no guru, I'm not a pro, but I mainly played mordhau when I wanted to just sit down, clef some knaves in twain with the boys with some brews, So, in this video, I'm gonna compare Civ 2 to mordhau a lot, and I know that they're pretty different games, but there's just not enough games out there like this to get a fair comparison for. In a lot of cases, it plays pretty similarly, but I think overall, the more I played it, the more it had like a Call of Duty vibe or Battlefield. So what do I mean by that? I think it's much more fast-paced and it feels much more directed. Like you usually spawn really close to enemies and your character is just literally auto-running towards them where you need to go without any input. So whereas in mordhau, the game's felt a little bit less directed and a bit lackadaisical. So Civ 2 also is a class-based character customization system, which reminds me it's kind of reminiscent of Call of Duty. And your class sort of has ultimate abilities that you charge, from getting kills and performing actions, and it can have a huge impact on the battle as a whole. Like the banner, which is this big AoE heal, which is pretty cool. There's kind of this macro strategizing that happens. So let's get straight into the combat system, the meat of the game. I think Civ 2 is going to appeal to a much wider audience, with the only drawback being that it might have a slightly lower skill ceiling. And to me, that's mainly because you won't see these goofy swing animations and sort of exploits that people do in mordhau. But Civ feels much more natural to pick up and understand, and the tutorial was also really good at explaining everything actually. And whereas in mordhau, you kind of have to learn through experience, and it took me almost 300 hours to really digest what is happening, and how to fight, how to parry well and stuff like that. So, let's go over some of the combat mechanics and what I think of them. The first notable difference from mordhau is the parry, and it's like a held block in Civ 2 that drains stamina. And I think of it more as like a defensive stance that you use to then perform riposts and counters from. And at first, when I played, I had a lot of habits from mordhau that didn't translate well, so it took me a few games to get used to this, but the more I played, the better it felt, the more natural it became. And it also allowed me to do well in 1vx situations pretty quickly, and it feels like it'll be way more new player friendly. It may not be as skillful as parries in mordhau, since in mordhau is more timing based. But it grew on me as I played, and I only played for about 8 hours during the beta, so I didn't master the game, but I played it for a good amount of time. So there might be some depth to uncover still. And at first I was a blocking Andy, and I kept holding it down for too long, but then you realize you shouldn't be holding the block down because of the next mechanic I'm going to talk about, the kick. In this game, the kick isn't used as an interrupt, which is really counterintuitive to pretty much every other game I've ever played that has a kick. But if you kick an enemy during a swing, it'll kind of knock them back, but their attack will most likely still hit you. So you should generally use it only to break blocks. And in order to interrupt enemy attacks, you have to use the jab mechanic, which has a much shorter range, so you'll need to be up close in personal range. It's a little harder to pull off, but I'm sure that I'll build the muscle memory in the future, and I found myself using the jab more in between combos to kind of keep the pressure on the enemy. But yeah, instead of jabbing, I started dodging more. So dodge isn't like a perk like in mordhau. which I find really cool. It's more of it's built into the nature of every class, and I feel no reason why it should be like a perk. Because in mordhau, it was kind of annoying sometimes when people would take dodge, because they would just kind of troll you because you could never really catch back up to them. And in Shiv, I think the dodge distance is just enough to disengage, but it doesn't create enough space where your opponent, where you can't re-engage with your opponent. And the stamina cost, I think, is pretty good for the dodge. So, next thing, morphs. Morphs from mordhau are feints and Shiv, and they work pretty similarly, and there's not too much to say here. They really feel really similar. But I have to say in Shiv 2 that you really need to commit to your actions more. There's not really swing canceling, or not that I really know of. But I even started using morphs to kind of avoid team damage, where in mordhau I would kind of just cancel. So it takes a little getting used to, but I think it's a good mechanic. In mordhau also, people could do some weird swing manipulation with the canceling, so I think they kind of took that out to kind of make it more new player friendly, so new players can read people a little more. And I kind of really like the fact that you have to commit to your actions. Now, heavy attack and special attacks, I like this. Nothing feels better to me than just getting that heavy attack with the hammer and just blowing up heads, you know? It made me feel like I have more actions than just swinging and dragging in mordhau. I really like to think about what move I have to use at what time, and it makes it so you have more buttons available to press during combat. You have more options. Oh, in throwing is you can throw anything in the game, dude. Even people's heads. You can chop off their heads and huck it at them. It's ludicrous. And throwing things feels exactly like Halo 2 grenades or Halo 1 grenades. Like, you can just huck something across the battlefield. So overall, I think that the combat system might result in a slightly lower skill ceiling than mordhau, but I'm not sure if they're going to change too much before release. It seems like it's in a really good spot, and it just needs some cleanup here and there. And I think it's totally going to appeal to the wider audience. And I was watching Giru play, and in his chat, a lot of mordhau sweats were saying that they hated it. Other mordhau pros said they liked it. I think it'll have a decent amount of depth to have some sort of competitive play, but I don't think it'll be like the next esport or anything like that. Alright, the game modes. In Shiv 1, I really enjoyed the various game modes and mods, and this is where I think mordhau is seriously lacking. In the beta of Shiv 2, there was just Team Deathmatch and Objective, I believe. And Team Deathmatch is just, you spawn across the enemy team, and you just go at it on a small map until each team loses 100 lives. And the Objective games are on much larger scale maps, and the enemy team has to, you know, progress through the map by completing objectives like raising the gate, you know, killing the peasants, stuff like that, until you get to the enemy team's king. And the king is a player that gets promoted from being on the top of their team's leaderboard. So it's similar to Shiv 1, and the level design is great, and in some areas there's like a lot of opportunity to outflank your enemies, and you can even crouch around and ninja sometimes. The crouch is really low, so you can kind of get behind obstacles and finagle your way around. And oh dude, before every match, when, you know, you're loading in, there's like this general that gives a speech. I love it. It's a great way to kind of get you pumped up, and you can see the other team lined up in front of you, and when the game starts, everyone just charges, like the game is auto running you at each other, and then it really feels like you're on the front line. Like it like the immersion is kind of top notch here. And but in the beta, there were a lot of glitches during this, and I hope they really smooth that out, because I really I really enjoyed that. And sometimes you just run in and get blasted and die like you really were on the front lines, and other teams you just massacre the other squad right away. You know, so I think it's a great way to start new matches. Also, what I love about that is that there's like no downtime between games. Like, I don't even have enough time to run to the bathroom, you know, and take a leak. It's amazing, you know, that's how it should be. And so to summarize, you know, the combat, the game modes, maps, the scenery, the feel of the game, all great. So what I don't like about the game right now, the first thing are the voices, the voice lines. I know it's a nod to Civ 1. But nothing beats the mordhau voice lines, in my opinion. The ones in Civ are really annoying, and people are constantly spamming the shout to cause this and I just feel like the roleplay is not as strong, especially since the environment of the game sort of encourages constant combat. So you're always like facing someone, you know, but I only played the game for 8 hours, so maybe they'll have some other game modes or types. But you know, I liked in mordhau how you could just walk up and you can kind of taunt enemies and people will kind of communicate with you before you fight. It adds a lot of personality and humanism to the game, instead of just spawning and dying like Call of Duty or something. I also didn't really like how you can't customize the appearance of your classes more. I'm not sure if that's going to be added later. I'm going to assume that it will be in some form. But if it isn't, that's one thing about mordhau is that I loved, is that I can make my character have a certain look and appearance, and you can really start to recognize people by their appearance on the battlefield. So be like, oh, that's the guy that killed me last time, I gotta go for him, you know. So I'm also still not completely sold on the more rigid class system. It makes the game feel much more, you know, like Call of Duty or Battlefield, which I'm not sure I personally like for this genre. I prefer the customization that mordhau has. I just choose what weapon and armor I have, and I guess the class system is much easier to balance. However, there's just something about putting on your favorite armor and weapon and cosmetics and just going into battle with it. You know, look good, feel good, play good. Another gripe I have is archers. Look, dude, nothing is worse than having an epic battle and then just getting sniped in the head or something. I think they do like so much damage, and I think mordhau did archers right. I liked being able to block arrows, and in Civ you can't really, and so you have to like run them down if they're targeting you or take a shield. And I really wish that I could block arrows with a timed block or something, but the arrows also fly so fast that I don't think they could add that. In Civ, they were really powerful. In Civ 1, they were really powerful. So perhaps they're trying to keep that consistency with that design, and I'm not really sure how I would fix that, but I just much prefer how mordhau did archers. I feel like I could deal with them. They were still kind of a pest and a nuisance, but like, if you got good enough, you could just block their arrows, and you know, it wasn't as big of a deal. And I would say let's say that those are my biggest gripes, you know, which are not terrible. And there's some small bugs here and there, not a big deal, just more preferences that I can deal with. So in the beta was fairly smooth, and I think that they'll really have most of the bugs ironed out by release. But overall, I think it's a must buy if you're into the genre, or you need a game to just hop on, lop some heads for a few hours and slay. So I think it's going to bring a lot of new players to the genre, and I hope, you know, it'll hold up in some competition. But you know, we'll see. I think it's a great game if you're into the genre. If you want to check out some gameplay, I have my stream recorded in the description. You can check it out. And alright, that's it for me. Hope you enjoyed the video. Much love.